DJ Rico Banks. That's what it is.
Hi, I'd like to welcome you to another episode of Underground Reggie. I'm your host, Rico Banks, and today on the show we have Space Bastards, Eric Peterson. They're going to be talking about their new comic series. Make sure you keep the dials locked in and listen to another episode. Hi, this is your host, Rico Banks, and I'd like to welcome you to another episode of Underground Reggie. Today on the show, we have Eric Peterson, creator and writer behind the comic Space Bastards. Eric, can you say what's up to the people?
Hello. This is Eric.
So, Eric, man, for our audience members who may not know, can you give them a background about Space Bastards and what you guys are doing with the upcoming comics and issues that's getting ready to come out?
Absolutely. So Space Bastards is a quarterly hardcover anthology. It all takes place in the universe. It's co-created and written by myself, my partner Joe Aubrey, and the visual look of the universe is created by Derek Robertson. You might know Derek from The Boys, which starts up on Amazon Prime this week, but was originally a comic with Garth Ennis. And then Transmetropolitan, which is how I became familiar with Derek's work way back when. And then as well as Happy, which runs on Sci-Fi. We also, other artists that we have on the book include Simon Bisley, who's in Volume 1, and right now he's working on his second story for us, which I really love. Simon Bisley, a lot of people over in America are familiar with Lobo, his work with Keith Giffen and Alan Grant there. In addition to that, 2000 AD, which is kind of how I found him. I found him through Judge Dredd and he did a Judge Dredd Batman crossover, which was one of the first things I ever bought, as well as Slaying the Horned God, which is kind of this fully painted piece that ran in 2000 AD, which I also found when I was very young.
Okay.
Real quick, Space Bastards is kind of just like a love letter to the comics I grew up reading. Right around the time I was like 12 or 13 years old is when I was when I found Vertigo Comics and 2000 AD and just kind of poured over all that unique art and writing and kind of had my mind blown open by it. And it's a project that goes back to around that same time. Around that same time is when I started drawing and doodling these characters and telling stories about them. And I went to film school, and when I was in film school, I was, ironically enough, reading Transmetropolitan by Warren Ellis and Derek Robertson. And met my co-writer, Joe Aubrey. We would build these film sets in my backyard and film Space Bastards movies. And then, eventually we realized, we can never make these movies as good as I want them to be due to financial. Can't make, a galaxy spanning epic
right
on that kind of budget. And but then we thought, by that point I had done a bunch of other comics before. We thought, what if we just set out to just pull our resources and make the comic we always wanted to read? And that's really what Space Bastards is. And we've been fortunate enough for me to actually work with all my heroes. We got Boo Cook in there as well. We've got Clint Langley, who's another 2080 hero of mine. Colin McNeil, who's painted one of my favorite, if not the favorite, Judge Dredd stories of all time, and a whole bunch of people. Glenn Fabry, we just enlisted the help of Glenn Fabry as well, who I love from Preacher. Yeah.
So with Space Bastards, you said that it was a love letter to the comics and the graphic novels that you loved in the past. What's something that drew you into those that type of illustration, that type of art form?
Sure. So, I grew up just like everybody else. I'm from Phoenix, Arizona. I grew up kind of having a normal, I found XMen when I was in 4th grade and all that stuff. And then, funny enough, the Sylvester Stallone Judge Dredd movie is what kind of turned me on to all that, because love it or hate it, that movie is actually kind of brilliant for a 12-year-old, a 13-year-old. When you see that, you're like, wow, this isn't superheroes, this is something else, but it's based on a comic, and it's kind of this dystopian, science fiction thing that satirizes America, which for whatever reason, that spoke to me that young. And then my grandma worked next door to a comic book shop and in California, and she was asking me what I wanted for Christmas, and I said, see if they have any Judge Dredd comics. And I'm very lucky she never opened any of them. They're not, I think, meant for a 12-year-old. But that was really it. I got all these fully painted comics, all this stuff featuring the work of Colin McNeil and Simon Bisley, and then later on from the Vertigos, that kind of turned me on to that voyage of finding unique entertainment, I think, and unique fiction, and that kind of turned me on to Vertigo Comics and kind of what Karen Berger was building over there, and that kind of shaped my adolescence. That really started everything for me.
Okay, so with like Judge Dredd and the films that I know that's kind of like Judge Dredd as far as like The Bright and The Sixth Sense and things like that and The Fifth Element, what's something that actually drew you to those type of films and what are some of your favorites?
Well, so I'm a little bit weird because I think like my inspiration growing up, and I think maybe Joe might be a little bit similar, is that like, you know, Pulp Fiction, I don't mean the movie, but I mean like that sort of pulpy stuff, like, you know, Star Wars and you know, Indiana Jones, like all this stuff we kind of grew up watching and all those movies. That, I mean, that when you're at a certain age, that's like cool. That's the thing. Blade Runner when you're a little bit older and all that. But then I went to film school and really like Quentin Tarantino became one of my favorite writers, and like you start really, you know, Terry Gilliam. I got really crazy into Terry Gilliam and Stanley Kubrick, and some of this other stuff sort of took over for me for a bit because I'm studying visual language and all of that. And Tarantino to date is kind of one of my, I think probably maybe one of the most influential writers to me, along with John Wagner of you know, Dredd and Strontium Dog and stuff. And so I would say that is like, it's kind of a mixture of that stuff. I think if you were to pick up Space Bastards today, which I'm 36 years old now, I think maybe some of those influences should be pretty readily apparent, you know.
Okay, so do you think that your love for basically the drama of the crime and the action element played a part in your writing style going into Space Bastards?
I think it's that, and I think the biggest thing is I love playing with the role of protagonist and moral ambiguity and all that. I think one of the coolest things about Space Bastards is that I love every single one of these characters. It's an ensemble cast, but they're all very different, and I would say there's not one that's totally 100% altruistic out of them. I know certainly who's the most altruistic, but I won't say that because spoilers, but but that's kind of the things that's one of the things I really, really love, and I think, you know, that's kind of some of the Tarantino and maybe a little bit of the Coen brothers shining through and stuff, is that I don't, you know, I love that role being defined. The protagonist is somebody who's trying to accomplish something, that story, you know, in that story, and they're faced with a foil. It doesn't necessarily mean that they're inherently your version of good or something like that. And then the other big thing that comes out of Space Bastards is consequences for action. And I can give you the premise real quick if that sort of helps shine on that. You know what I mean? So in the future, America has largely taken over, you know, the universe, and they've leapt out there, and really a lot of infrastructures that we take for granted today just don't exist or they don't function properly. Getting packages in between planets is a hassle. It's 80% of packages don't get there at all. It's due to space pirates and missing infrastructure and things like that. Postmaster General Roy Sharpton inherits the Postal Service, the Intergalactic Postal Service, and he realizes that this is the problem. It's costing everybody so much money. The company's on the brink of bankruptcy, all that stuff, and then in you know, kind of a lightning in a bottle moment, he figures out that, you know, if all these postal workers acted like the package getting there safe, you know, their lives depended on it, then they would probably do it. So he came up with the 3 rules for the Intergalactic Postal Service. Whoever delivers the package gets the cash. A postal worker can use any means or weaponry necessary to steal a package that's in play for themselves. And the more times that a package changes hands, the more times that you hear the dispatch bracelet on their arms go parcel transfer, the more fees that a customer has to pay. Those fees are what go to the postal worker. So all these postal workers basically, you know, kill each other. They're free enterprise. They don't have a boss. They don't have paperwork. They don't have the rigmarole, you know, the normal 9-to-5 stuff to deal with like everybody else. But they do get shot at for a living. Mm-hmm. So, you know, originally maybe this attracted a whole lot of ex-convicts and stuff like that, people who are used to a dangerous lifestyle, but pretty soon it kind of became a cultural thing. You know, guys who were just tired of the 9-to-5 going through a midlife crisis, maybe dudes who were just like divorced and they used to be a real estate agent and they're just tired, whatever it is. It's kind of like Uber, right? If Uber was like super homicidal and psychotic, you know what I mean? And so you have that, a little bit of Breaking Bad thing going on where people who are hitting that moment in their life where they just go, dude, I am so done with the grind. They realize that they'd rather be shot at for a living than go back to that office. You know what I mean? So I get asked this all the time, right? Like, what's your market? Like, who actually would like this? And it's always kind of a funny question to answer, which is like, yeah, anybody who's been dissatisfied at one point or another in their life, you know, that's our market, you know.
Man, this is an amazing plot. I was going to ask you, okay, with the development of Space Bastards, is this something that you saw as being something basically standing the test of time?
Yeah, so I mean, I think that was kind of one of the things that really enticed me and Joe was this is timeless a little bit. I mean, it definitely speaks about America, and there's a lot of satire here. And I think especially these days with what's going on, it's a little, present, I think, and speaks to some of the cultural changes. It definitely is, I think, a love letter to sort of the American dream and how that's evolved and kind of the consequences of that. And so there's a lot of that in terms of like how the length of the series or anything like that. We originally set out to make like a 200-page mini series with Derek Robertson, and over time we kind of realized like, well, we have something really expansive here. It'd be cool if we had all these other stories that sort of weave in and out of that, and that's what allowed us to start doing some of these other stories. So right now we're doing something really unique where I think it might be re-released as like floppies and traditional comic books, in the future, but really our way is releasing this sort of Criterion Collection deluxe oversized hardcover. I mean, it's about a foot tall. I mean, this thing's huge and awesome, and it's very good, beefy book, and we're going to release these quarterly. We've already produced a year of them, so we've got 4 of these volumes done in the can. And the first one right now, people can get it if they go on Kickstarter. You go on Kickstarter and do a search for Space Bastards, or if you include a link, then they can find it, and that's the way to get it. If you want Space Bastards, you get it direct from us. You get the director's cut edition, basically, to read first, and then possibly in the future we'll have more, kind of bite-sized pieces out there in the marketplace. But right now, it's like, you buy this book, Joe and I are taking you on a voyage here. You know what I mean? Every 3 months. I mean, it's done. It's there. People have the book in their hands because we just got back from San Diego Comic-Con. It's a thing that exists, and everybody that's gotten it has been really, really happy and welcoming, and we've gotten great feedback.
Okay, so for our audience members that like to keep up with everything that's happening with Space Bastards, can you let them know where they can follow you and find out more information on social media?
Yeah, so we have an Instagram, space_bastards. If you go on Facebook and do a search for the Intergalactic Postal Service, you can find us there. The most important thing I would say right now is if this is a book that you think you like and you want to get behind, because it isn't, you're the daily, it isn't a lot of the stuff that's really kind of pervades the marketplace. I would always encourage you to go get it on Kickstarter, because the more waves we make there, it doesn't necessarily mean things for the immediate future. I mean, like I said, book 2, book 3, book 4 are already done, but it means that we have a much longer future ahead of us. And, so we're really big on that right now. If nothing else, go to spacebastards.com. We actually have like a game, like a gamified social media site tied into that. If you register for our newsletter on spacebastards.com, you'll automatically have your own personal Space Bastard created on our website, which you can flesh out. You can add a picture of whatever you want to do. You can steal packages on that site. You can make money, earn credits to like buy better weaponry and all that stuff. It's kind of cool. It's just a little side thing,
Yeah, that's amazing, man. Hey, before I let you go, any last remarks, any last comments that you'd like to give our audience members?
No, I mean, I think that's kind of it. I mean, sorry, I did the information dump on you here, but I definitely want to make sure everybody understands what's going on, because it is a very special, unique book. Everybody's actually like gotten it in their hands. It's been like, I can't believe something like this exists. So it's pretty cool. I would just encourage everybody to check it out. If you get the book, you're not just getting the book; you are becoming a Space Bastard. So I encourage you to do that.
Eric, I appreciate your time, and I appreciate you stopping by to talk with us today. Thank you.
Thank you, man. I appreciate it.
All right, thank you.
DJ Rico Banks. That's what it is.
Special thanks to Eric Peterson for stopping through and speaking with us today. Make sure you pick up issues of their comic book when they hit newsstands. Until next time, and catch us again, man. This has been Underground Reggie.